You've seen it happen. The entitlement, the arrogance, the moment someone thinks their bank account gives them the right to treat others like dirt. But what happened on Flight 882 to Paris wasn't just another case of a rich VIP bullying his way into a seat he didn't pay for. It was the mistake that brought an entire airline to its knees. When billionaire heir Harrison Sterling demanded Damien and Seraphiel Miller be kicked out of first class, he didn't realize he wasn't just insulting two passengers. He was signing the death warrant for the airline itself. This is the story of how one act of disrespect cost billions. The hum of JFK International Airport was a beast of its own, a constant, low-frequency roar of rolling suitcases, announcements, and the collective anxiety of thousands of travelers. But for Damien and Seraphiel Miller, the noise faded into the background, replaced by the quiet hum of anticipation. Damien adjusted the collar of his navy blazer, glancing down at the boarding passes in his hand. First class, seat 1A and 1B. It had taken 5 years of saving, overtime shifts, and missed weekends, but he had finally done it. This wasn't just a flight. It was a promise kept. 10 years ago, when they were scraping by in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, eating instant noodles on their anniversary, Damien had held Seraphiel's hand and sworn that for their 10th anniversary, he would take her to Paris. Not just to Paris, but in style. "Stop squeezing the tickets, honey," Seraphiel laughed softly, placing a hand on his arm. She looked radiant, her curls bouncing as she tilted her head. "The ink isn't going to run away." Damien grinned, relaxing his grip. "I just want everything to be perfect. You deserve perfect." "I have you," she said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's perfect enough. But the champagne won't hurt." They approached the gate for Cloudstream Airlines Flight 882. Cloudstream was a mid-sized carrier trying to rebrand itself as a luxury boutique airline. The branding was sleek, silver and teal everywhere, but the cracks were visible if you looked close enough. The carpet at the gate was slightly frayed, and the staff looked overworked. At the podium stood a gate agent named Jennifer. She looked exhausted, her ponytail drooping, typing furiously on a keyboard that seemed to be sticking. "Good evening," Damien said, his voice warm and steady. He placed the passes on the counter. "Checking in for 1A and 1B. Damien and Seraphiel Miller." Jennifer didn't look up immediately. She frowned at her screen, typed a command, and then sighed. When she finally looked up, her customer service smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Happy anniversary?" She read off the screen. "That's right," Damien beamed. Jennifer scanned the passes. The machine beeped, a sharp, angry red sound. She paused. 1 moment. She typed again, faster this time, her brow furrowed. "That's odd. Is there a problem?" Seraphiel asked, her grip tightening on her purse. "I'm getting an error code," Jennifer muttered. "It says, seat reassignment pending." Damien's stomach dropped. "Reassignment? We booked these seats 6 months ago. Paid full fare. No points, no upgrades. Cash." "I understand, sir. Let me just call the supervisor." Jennifer picked up the heavy black phone, turning her back slightly to whisper. While she was on the phone, the atmosphere at the gate shifted. The air seemed to get colder, sharper. A hush fell over the line of passengers behind them. Walking toward the counter was a man who looked like he owned the building. He was tall, wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than Damien's car, and he was flanked by 2 assistants who were frantically typing on tablets. This was Harrison Sterling. Damien recognized him immediately. Everyone in New York knew the Sterling name. Real estate, shipping, old money that dated back to the Industrial Revolution. Harrison was the fail son of the family, known more for his DUI arrests and yacht parties than any business acumen. He walked with a swagger that screamed, "Move!" He bypassed the line entirely, slamming a platinum card onto the counter, right on top of Damien's boarding passes. "I need a seat," Harrison announced, his voice booming. He didn't look at Damien or Seraphiel. He didn't even acknowledge their existence. "First class, front row. I don't care what it costs. Just get me on." Jennifer hung up the phone, looking terrified. Mr. Sterling, we're honored to have you. But the flight is fully booked." Harrison laughed, a dry, humorless bark. "Fully booked is a term for poor people, darling. I'm Harrison Sterling. Make space." Damien stepped forward, his hand resting on his boarding passes. "Excuse me. We are currently checking in. And those seats," he pointed to the screen, "are ours." Harrison finally turned. He looked Damien up and down, his eyes glazing over with a mix of boredom and disdain. It wasn't just that Damien was in his way. It was the look of a man who had never been told no in his life. He saw a black couple in decent clothes and assumed they were placeholders. "Cute," Harrison sneered. He turned back to Jennifer. "Bump them." "Excuse me?" Seraphiel's voice was sharp. "We aren't luggage. You can't just bump us." "I can do whatever I want," Harrison said, checking his Rolex. "I have a meeting in Paris in 7 hours that is worth more than your entire lineage. Agent, fix this, now." Jennifer looked between the furious billionaire and the stunned couple. She was shaking. "Mr. Sterling, I can't. The system shows they are checked in. Get Henderson down here," Harrison barked. "Now." Minutes later, a man in a cheap, ill-fitting suit scurried down the jet bridge. It was Greg Henderson, the station manager. He was sweating, his face red and blotchy. He took one look at Harrison Sterling, and his spine seemed to liquefy. "Mr. Sterling," Henderson gasped, "I am so sorry for the delay. Please forgive the incompetence of my staff." "Henderson," Harrison said coolly, "I want seat 1A. My assistant needs 1B. These two," he gestured vaguely at Damien and Seraphiel, "are in my way." Henderson turned to Damien, his demeanor shifting instantly from servile to authoritative. "Sir, I'm going to need your boarding passes." "These are our seats," Damien said, his voice dropping an octave. He wasn't yelling. He was calm, which was far more dangerous. "We paid for them. We are boarding." Henderson snatched the passes from the counter. "There has been a system error, an overbooking. As per Cloudstream policy, we have to prioritize our Diamond Elite partners." "I don't care about your partners," Damien said. "I care about the contract of carriage. We have confirmed tickets." "I can offer you a voucher for $200 and a seat in economy," Henderson said, typing rapidly. "Row 34. It's the best I can do." "Row 34 is the bathroom row," Seraphiel said, tears welling in her eyes. "Damien, please." "We aren't taking it," Damien stated. Harrison sighed loudly. "God, this is tedious. Henderson, call security. Have them removed for causing a disturbance." "Sir," Henderson said to Damien, "if you don't accept the downgrade, I will have to classify this as belligerent behavior. You won't fly at all. You'll be banned." Damien looked at Henderson. Then he looked at Harrison Sterling, who was already texting on his phone, bored. "You really want to do this?" Damien asked quietly. "You are making a mistake, Mr. Henderson, a very expensive mistake." "Is that a threat?" Henderson scoffed. "Security." 2 large TSA agents, who had been hovering nearby, stepped forward. "Fine," Damien said, raising his hands. "We'll take the downgrade." Harrison chuckled. "Smart choice. Enjoy the pretzels." He grabbed the new boarding passes Jennifer had printed and breezed past them onto the jet bridge without a backward glance. Damien took the crumpled economy passes from Henderson. His hands weren't shaking. He was perfectly still. You have no idea who you just bumped, Damien whispered to Henderson. Henderson rolled his eyes. Yeah, everyone's a somebody these days. Get on the plane or get left behind. As they walked down the narrow aisle toward the back of the plane, passing the first-class cabin, where Harrison was already sipping their pre-flight champagne, Seraphil wiped a tear from her cheek. "I'm sorry, Damien," she whispered. "I know how much you wanted this." Damien stopped at row 34. It was cramped, smelling faintly of disinfectant and stale coffee. He sat down, pulled out his phone, and opened a secure app. "Don't be sorry, Seraphil," Damien said, his eyes cold and hard as he typed a message. "Harrison Sterling wanted a show. He's going to get the finale." He hit send. The recipient was a contact named, simply, the auditor. The flight was a nightmare. Row 34 didn't recline. Every time the bathroom door opened, which was every 5 minutes, a waft of blue chemical smell washed over them. Seraphil tried to sleep, leaning her head on Damien's shoulder. But the seat was rigid, and the engine noise was deafening back here. Up in first class, the atmosphere was a party. Harrison Sterling had turned the cabin into his personal lounge. He was loud, demanding bottle after bottle of vintage Dom Perignon. He was flirting aggressively with the flight attendants, snapping his fingers when he wanted a refill. "Hey, you!" Harrison shouted at a flight attendant named Chloe. "My glass is empty. Do I look like I drink air?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "We're running low on the vintage stock." "Then go find more," he yelled, slamming his hand on the tray table. "I own this sky." Back in row 34, Damien wasn't sleeping. He had purchased the in-flight Wi-Fi, exorbitantly priced at $25, and was working. Seraphil woke up around 3 hours into the flight. "Damien, what are you doing?" Damien turned his screen so she couldn't see the specific documents, but she saw the header. Cloudstream Aviation, Q3 Financial Liability Report. "I'm doing a little research," Damien said. "Did you know Cloudstream is currently in the middle of a massive debt restructuring?" Seraphil rubbed her eyes. "No." "What does that mean?" "It means they don't actually own their planes," Damien said, a small, dangerous smile playing on his lips. "They lease them. And the company they lease them from? It's a holding company called Aero Capital Global." "Okay," Seraphil said, confused. "I'm on the board of Aero Capital, Seraphil." Seraphil's eyes went wide. She knew Damien was a high-level corporate fixers, a specialist in mergers and acquisitions, but he rarely discussed the specifics of his portfolio. "You own the plane?" she whispered. "Technically the firm does, but I hold the proxy vote for the majority share," Damien explained. "And Cloudstream is currently 60 days past due on their lease payments. We were letting it slide because they promised a restructuring plan. We were being lenient." He looked toward the front of the plane. Lenience just expired. Damien typed a new email. This one wasn't to a generic auditor. It was to Jonathan Pierce, the CEO of Aero Capital Global. Subject: Immediate lease recall. Cloudstream Flight 882. Message: Jonathan, I am currently on Flight 882. I have just witnessed a gross violation of our operational conduct agreement, specifically Clause 4, regarding passenger prioritization and anti-discrimination protocols. Furthermore, the station manager, Henderson, openly admitted to prioritizing unsecured passengers over confirmed ticket holders, creating a liability risk. Cloudstream is in breach. Trigger the repo clause. I want this bird grounded the second wheels touch the tarmac in Paris. D. Miller. He hit send. 10 minutes later, a reply pinged. Subject: Immediate lease. Recall message. Done. The French authorities are being notified as we speak. We are seizing the asset upon arrival. This is going to be messy, Damien. Are you sure? Damien looked at Seraphiel, who was trying to get comfortable in the hard plastic seat, clutching the thin, scratchy blanket. Reply. 100%. Burn it down. Up in first class, Harrison Sterling was getting rowdier. He had spilled champagne on the floor and was demanding the flight attendants clean it up on their hands and knees. Pathetic, Harrison sneered as Chloe wiped the floor. This airline is garbage. My father should buy it just to fire all of you. Little did he know, the process to fire everyone had already begun. 2 hours before landing, the mood on the plane shifted. The captain's voice came over the intercom, sounding strained. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Myers. We've, received a message from ground control in Paris. We have been assigned a remote stand for parking. Please remain in your seats upon landing. We anticipate a heavy security presence. Nothing to be alarmed about. Damien closed his laptop. Here we go. What's happening? Seraphiel asked. Justice, Damien said. When the plane landed at Charles de Gaulle, it didn't taxi to a gate. It was directed to a far corner of the airfield, surrounded by flashing blue lights, police cars, lots of them, and 3 black SUVs with the logo of the French Aviation Authority. Harrison Sterling looked out the window and laughed. Look at that, VIP escort. They must know I'm on board. Finally, some respect. He stood up before the seatbelt sign turned off, grabbing his bag. Out of my way, peasants. The king has arrived. The plane door opened, but it wasn't a jet bridge. It was a mobile staircase, and rushing up the stairs weren't chauffeurs. They were French gendarmerie and 2 men in suits holding clipboards. Harrison pushed his way to the front, right as the lead officer stepped onto the plane. Bonjour, the officer said sternly. No one is to leave this aircraft. Excuse me, Harrison barked. I am Harrison Sterling. I don't wait for French cops. Move. He tried to shove past the officer. The officer didn't budge. He grabbed Harrison's arm with a grip of iron. Monsieur, step back. This aircraft is now under the jurisdiction of the court. It has been seized. Seized? Harrison sputtered. What are you talking about? This aircraft has been repossessed due to non-payment and breach of contract, one of the men in suits announced to the stunned cabin. Cloudstream Airlines has effectively ceased operations as of 10 a.m. this morning. All passengers must disembark for processing. But first, we need to speak to the station manager and a Mr. Damien Miller. Harrison froze. He turned his head slowly to look down the aisle. From the back of the plane, walking slowly past the confused passengers in economy, came Damien Miller. He looked fresh, calm, and utterly in control. Damien stopped at the front of the cabin. He looked at the officer. I am Damien Miller, he said. Monsieur Miller, the man in the suit bowed slightly. We received the order from Aerocapital. The lien has been executed. We apologize for the inconvenience. Harrison's jaw dropped. You? You did this? Damien finally looked at Harrison. The silence in the cabin was heavy enough to crush a man. I told you, Damien said, his voice smooth as silk. You have no idea who you bumped. Damien turned to the officer. Officer, this man, Mr. Sterling, assaulted a flight attendant verbally and disrupted the flight safety protocols. I'd like to file a formal statement. Harrison's face went pale. Now wait a minute. Get him off my plane, Damien said. The tarmac at Charles de Gaulle Airport was cold and windy, a stark contrast to the climate-controlled arrogance Harrison Sterling had displayed for the last 7 hours. This is kidnapping, Harrison screamed as 2 gendarmerie officers escorted him down the metal stairs. His wrists were not in handcuffs yet, but the grip on his biceps was tight enough to bruise. I am an American citizen. I demand to speak to the ambassador. Do you hear me? Damien and Seraphiel stood at the top of the stairs, watching the scene unfold. The cool Parisian breeze ruffled Seraphile's hair. She looked at her husband, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time in years. "You shut down the airline, Damien?" she whispered, half in awe, half in terror. "For me?" Damien adjusted his blazer. "I shut down a failing asset that was being mismanaged by incompetent leadership who thought it was okay to discriminate against high-value stakeholders. The fact that it happened to be for you, well, that's just a bonus." He turned to the lead officer, a man named Commandant Dupont. "Commandant," Damien said, handing over a business card that was heavier and thicker than a credit card. It was matte black with gold embossing, Aero Capital Global, Executive Director. "My firm technically owns this airframe. I am authorizing you to remove Mr. Sterling for endangering the flight crew and for trespassing on a seized asset." Dupont looked at the card, then at Damien. A flicker of respect crossed his face. "Understood, Monsieur Miller. And the other passengers?" "They are victims of Cloudstream's incompetence," Damien said loud enough for the people behind him to hear. "Cloudstream Airlines is insolvent. Their accounts are frozen. However, Aero Capital will not leave people stranded. I have already contacted Air France. Buses are waiting to take everyone to Terminal 2E. You have all been rebooked on the next flight to your final destinations, first class where available, full reimbursement for this flight, and €5,000 in compensation for the delay." A cheer erupted from the passengers behind them, the same passengers who had watched Damien get marched to the back of the plane hours earlier. Harrison, hearing this from the bottom of the stairs, turned purple. "You can't do that! That's my money! My father invests in your fund!" Damien walked down the stairs slowly, Seraphile on his arm. He stopped on the bottom step, looking down at Harrison, who was now being forced into the back of a police cruiser, not a limousine. "Your father invests in a subsidiary fund, Harrison," Damien said calmly. "A fund I oversee. And when I call him in about 10 minutes to explain why his son caused a PR nightmare that devalued his portfolio, I don't think he's going to be worried about your bail money." "You're a nobody!" Harrison spat, saliva flying. "A glorified accountant. And you," Damien smiled, "are a liability." Damien nodded to Dupont. The officer shoved Harrison into the car and slammed the door. As the siren wailed and the car sped off toward the detention center, Damien turned to the stunned Cloudstream flight crew standing on the tarmac. Chloe, the flight attendant Harrison had humiliated, looked terrified. She was holding her small suitcase, shivering. "Mr. Miller," she stammered. Are we fired? If the airline is shut down..." Damien looked at the crew. They were exhausted, overworked, and had been terrorized by a billionaire brat for 7 hours. "Cloudstream is finished," Damien said bluntly. "Management will be liquidated, but Aero Capital is taking over the fleet. We need good crews to transition the planes to our new leasing partners. Go to the Hilton at the airport. I've booked rooms for the whole crew. Rest up. Call my office on Monday. You have a job if you want one." Chloe burst into tears. Thank you so much." As Damien and Seraphile walked toward the black Mercedes sedan that Aero Capital's French branch had sent for them, Seraphile squeezed Damien's hand. "That was sexy," she whispered. Damien laughed, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. "Let's get to the hotel. I need a shower, and we have a dinner reservation at L'Ambroisie. I promised you Paris in style, didn't I?" But while Damien and Seraphile were heading toward a romantic evening, the world was waking up to the chaos. Inside the terminal, the news was spreading like wildfire. Cloudstream Airlines ceases operations. The departure boards turned red. Thousands of passengers were stranded in New York, London, and Tokyo. The sudden collapse of the airline was the top story on CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera. And in the middle of it all, a video started to climb the trending charts on TikTok and Twitter. A teenager in seat 2A, right behind where Harrison had been sitting, had recorded everything. The video was shaky, filmed vertically from under a blanket, but the audio was crystal clear. Title: Billionaire Karen Gets Airline Shut Down. The footage showed Harrison Sterling standing over Chloe, screaming, "My glass is empty. Do I look like I drink air? Fully booked is a term for poor people. I own this sky." Then the camera panned to Damian Miller, calm and collected, being forced to the back of the plane. The caption read, "He kicked out this nice couple just to flex." Then the jump cut to the landing, the flashing lights, the French police, and finally, the money shot. Harrison Sterling being shoved into a police car while screaming about his father. Within 2 hours, the video had 4 million views. By the time Damien and Seraphiel checked into the Ritz Paris, it had 15 million. Hashtags began to trend. George Harrison Sterling, Istrash, Asht Boycott Sterling Corp, Asht Justice for the Millers. Damien emerged from the shower, wrapping a plush white robe around himself. He picked up his phone and saw 140 missed calls. Most were from journalists. 3 were from the CEO of Cloudstream, and 1 was from Arthur Sterling, Harrison's father. "Oh, this is going to be good," Damien murmured. "Who is it?" Seraphiel asked, stepping out of the bathroom in a matching robe, holding a glass of champagne. "The big boss, the patriarch." Damien showed her the screen. "Are you going to answer?" "Not yet," Damien said, swiping the phone to silent. "Let him sweat. Negotiations are always better when the other party is desperate." He turned on the TV in the hotel room. A French news anchor was speaking rapidly, with an image of the Cloudstream plane on the screen. The chyron read, "Scandale aérien. L'héritier américain arrêté." Airline scandal. American Air arrested. The scene cut to a reporter standing outside the terminal at JFK, where Greg Henderson, the station manager who had bumped them, was trying to leave the airport. A mob of angry passengers, whose flights had been cancelled due to the shutdown, surrounded him. "Mr. Henderson! Mr. Henderson!" a reporter shouted, shoving a microphone in his face. "Did you illegally prioritize Harrison Sterling over ticketed passengers? Is it true you accepted a bribe?" Henderson looked like a deer in headlights. He was sweating profusely, his tie undone. No comment. I was following protocol. The system. It was a system error." "We have emails," the reporter shouted back. "An internal leak suggests you manually overrode the system. What do you say to the families stranded here?" Henderson pushed the microphone away and sprinted toward a taxi, losing a shoe in the process. Damien took a sip of champagne. "The auditor works fast." "You leaked the emails?" Seraphiel asked, her eyes wide. "I didn't have to." Damien smiled. "When a ship sinks, the rats don't just swim, they squeal. Someone in IT probably saw the writing on the wall and decided to sell the story to TMZ before their paycheck bounced." Just then, Damien's phone rang again. It wasn't Arthur Sterling this time. It was a video call request from an unknown number. Damien accepted. The face of Cloudstream's CEO, Martin Thorne, appeared on the screen. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He was in a boardroom, surrounded by lawyers. "Miller," Thorne barked, "what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Enjoying a lovely Pinot Noir in Paris, Martin." "You?" Damien replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You seized my fleet. You grounded 40 aircraft globally. Do you have any idea the damage you've caused?" "I caused?" Damien raised an eyebrow. "Martin, your station manager violated the Civil Aviation Access Act and the terms of our lease regarding reputational risk. You let a drunken trust fund baby hijack a flight, abuse the crew, and displace the holder of the senior lien on your debt. We can fix this, Thorne pleaded, his tone shifting from anger to desperation. Release the planes. I'll fire Henderson. I'll issue a public apology to you and your wife. Just call off the repo. The stock dropped 60% in 2 hours. We're bleeding out. It's too late, Martin, Damien said coldly. The market has already decided. The video of Sterling is at 20 million views. If Aero Capital keeps doing business with Cloudstream, we look like we support that behavior. We're cutting the cord. You're bankrupting us. You bankrupted yourself when you sold your integrity for a VIP who didn't even pay for his seat, Damien said. Goodbye, Martin. Damien hung up. Seraphiel sat next to him on the bed. So, that's it? The airline is really gone? It will be bought out for parts by Monday, Damien predicted. But that's business. Now the personal part. He dialed Arthur Sterling back. It rang once. Miller. The voice on the other end was a low growl. Arthur Sterling was a man who chewed glass for breakfast. My son is in a French jail cell. They are charging him with endangerment of civil aviation. That carries a 5-year sentence in France. The French take their airspace very seriously, Arthur, Damien said. Fix it, Arthur demanded. You know the judges. You know the strings. Pull them. Why would I do that? Damien asked. He insulted my wife. He made her cry. Do you know how long it's been since I saw Seraphiel cry, Arthur? There was a silence on the line. Then Arthur's voice changed. It became businesslike, transactional. What do you want, Damien? I know you. You don't do this just for spite. You want something. I want the Sterling Plaza building in Midtown, Damien said casually. You're out of your mind. That's the crown jewel of our real estate portfolio. And your son is the crown jewel of your family. Or so you say, Damien countered. The video is bad, Arthur. But I have the affidavit from the flight attendant, Chloe. She's ready to sue for sexual harassment and hostile work environment. If that goes to court, Sterling Corp stock will tank harder than Cloudstream. Arthur breathed heavily into the phone. If I give you the deed, will the charges go away? I can't control the French police, Damien admitted. But I can choose not to press charges personally. And I can advise the crew, who will be working for me now, to settle out of court. Harrison comes home. But he comes home with a criminal record and a ban from every airline in the Sky Team Alliance. The building for the boy, Arthur grunted. The building for the boy, Damien confirmed. Send the papers to my lawyer. Oh, and Arthur. What? Tell Harrison to take the boat next time. Damien hung up and tossed the phone onto the duvet. He turned to Seraphiel, who was looking at him with a mix of shock and adoration. Did you just trade a billionaire's freedom for a skyscraper? She asked. I think it will make a nice new headquarters for my non-profit, Damien mused. The one that helps underprivileged youth get into aviation school. Seraphiel tackled him onto the bed, laughing. You are absolutely terrifying. I'm just a guy who wanted to sit in 1A, Damien grinned. But the story wasn't over. While the titans of industry were making deals in high towers, Harrison Sterling was about to learn that, in the real world, Daddy's money couldn't buy everything, especially not inside a French holding cell. And back in New York, Greg Henderson was about to find out that the internet detectives had found his home address. While Damien Miller was negotiating skyscrapers in Paris, Greg Henderson was learning the true definition of a bad day in Queens, New York. Henderson had managed to escape the mob at JFK by hopping into an unlicensed gypsy cab, paying the driver $100 to get him out of the terminal. He crouched in the back seat, his phone buzzing incessantly. It wasn't just calls anymore. It was texts, DMs, emails. How did they get my number? He thought, panic rising in his throat like bile. He opened Twitter. He shouldn't have. His face was everywhere. Not just the video of him bumping the Millers, but old photos. A picture of him at a barbecue from his wife's Facebook. A photo of him accepting the Manager of the Month award 3 years ago. The top comment on the viral thread read, "This is Greg Henderson. He lives at redacted address in Forest Hills. He likes to kick honest people off planes for billionaires. Let's say hello." "Turn around," Henderson screamed at the driver. "What?" the driver shouted back, startled. "Don't go to Forest Hills. Go to a motel. Anywhere. Just drive." Henderson knew he couldn't go home. The internet mob was faster than the police. He checked his work email, hoping for a lifeline from corporate. There was one new email from Cloudstream HR. Legal Division. Subject: Notice of immediate termination and legal hold. Mr. Henderson, effective immediately, your employment with Cloudstream Airlines is terminated for cause. Specifically, gross misconduct, violation of federal aviation regulations, 14 CFR Part 250, and falsification of passenger manifests. Furthermore, be advised that the Department of Transportation, DOT, and the FBI have subpoenaed our records regarding this incident. We are fully cooperating. You are advised to retain personal counsel. Do not contact any Cloudstream employees. Henderson dropped the phone. It clattered onto the dirty floor mat of the cab. "Falsification?" he whispered. "I did what they told me to do. I prioritized the VIP." But he realized the trap. There was no written order. Harrison Sterling hadn't emailed a request. He had just demanded it. And Henderson, desperate to please, had manually overridden the system. He had marked Damien and Seraphil Miller as no-shows in the computer to free up the seats, then rebooked them. That was fraud. That was a federal crime. The cab pulled into a seedy motel in Jamaica, Queens. Henderson checked in under a fake name, paying cash. He sat on the stained bedspread, the neon light from the sign outside flickering through the curtains. He turned on the TV. The Attorney General of New York was giving a press conference. "We are launching a full investigation into the discriminatory practices of Cloudstream Airlines," the AG announced, looking stern. "And we are looking specifically at the actions of the station manager, Gregory Henderson, who appears to have targeted passengers based on race and class to accommodate a wealthy donor. No one is above the law." Henderson put his head in his hands and wept. He had spent 20 years climbing the ladder, kissing the rings of men like Harrison Sterling, thinking it would protect him. He thought if he served the rich, he would be safe. Instead, he was the firewall they were burning to save themselves. His phone buzzed one last time before the battery died. It was a text from his wife. "Linda, people are outside the house, Greg. Reporters. Screaming people. They're throwing eggs at the garage. The kids are crying. Where are you? Don't come back here. I'm taking them to my mother's. I can't believe you did this." Greg Henderson lay back on the bed, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. He was alone. He was unemployed. He was facing federal charges. And the billionaire he had ruined his life for probably didn't even remember his name. 3 days later, the heavy iron doors of the Centre Pénitentiaire de Paris-La Santé buzzed open. Harrison Sterling walked out, shielding his eyes from the grey Parisian sunlight. He looked like a shadow of the man who had boarded Flight 882. His bespoke suit was wrinkled and smelled of stale sweat. He hadn't shaved. His signature arrogance had been replaced by a jittery, wide-eyed paranoia. He had spent 72 hours in a holding cell with a pickpocket from Marseille and a soccer hooligan who didn't speak a word of English, but enjoyed making throat-slitting gestures every time Harrison asked for water. Waiting for him at the curb wasn't a limousine. It was a black van with tinted windows. Two men in dark suits, private security, not police, stepped out. "Mr. Sterling," one of them said. It wasn't a greeting, it was a command. "Get in." "Where is my father?" Harrison croaked. His throat was raw from screaming at guards who ignored him. "I want a shower. Take me to the Four Seasons." "We are taking you to Le Bourget Airport," the guard said, opening the door. "Your father's jet is waiting. You are leaving France immediately." "Good," Harrison scoffed, trying to regain a shred of his dignity. "This country is a sewer anyway. I'm suing everyone when I get home. The airline, the police, that Miller guy." He climbed into the van. There was no champagne waiting, just a bottle of lukewarm water. The flight back to New York was silent. The staff on the private jet, usually chatty and subservient, avoided eye contact. They served him food in silence and retreated to the galley. Harrison checked his phone. It had been returned to him upon release. He had lost 100,000 followers on Instagram, but gained 2 million hate comments. Whatever, he thought. Bad publicity is still publicity. I'll go on a talk show. I'll spin it. I'll say I was stressed. I'll check into rehab for exhaustion. People love a comeback story. He was already writing his apology tweet in his head when the plane touched down at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. A black Rolls-Royce was waiting on the tarmac. Harrison smiled. Finally. Dad is here. He walked down the stairs, ready to be embraced, or at least yelled at and then forgiven. That was the cycle. Harrison messed up, Arthur yelled, wrote a check, and the world kept turning. But when the door of the Rolls-Royce opened, Arthur Sterling didn't step out. Instead, a man named Martin Vance stepped out. Vance was the family's chief legal counsel, the Grim Reaper of Sterling Corp. "Martin," Harrison asked, stopping at the bottom of the stairs. "Where's Dad?" "Your father is at the estate, Harrison," Vance said. His voice was devoid of emotion. He held out a manila envelope. "He asked me to give you this." Harrison took the envelope. "What is it?" "My court dates." "Open it." Harrison tore the seal. Inside were legal documents. He scanned the first page. Notice of removal from Board of Directors. Revocation of trust fund access. Eviction. Notice. 432 Park Avenue, penthouse. Harrison's hands started to shake. "Is this a joke? Is he trying to teach me a lesson?" "It's not a lesson, Harrison," Vance said. "It's a severance." "He can't cut me off. I'm his son." "You are a liability," Vance corrected. "Do you know what you cost the family this week?" The airline shut down." "So what? We don't own the airline." "Damian Miller, the man you assaulted, is the executive director of Aero Capital," Vance said, his voice dripping with ice. "He held the debt on Cloudstream, but more importantly, he knows where the bodies are buried in our European holdings. To stop him from launching an SEC investigation into our shipping logistics, your father had to make a trade." Harrison felt cold. "What trade?" "We transferred the deed to the Sterling Plaza building to a holding company controlled by Miller," Vance said. "A $2 billion asset. Gone. Because you wanted a seat you didn't pay for." Harrison gasped. $2 billion? "Your father is done, Harrison. He's done cleaning up your messes. The board voted this morning. You are out of the company. You are out of the trust. You have a stipend of $3,000 a month for 6 months to get on your feet. After that, you are on your own." "3,000?" Harrison laughed hysterically. "That doesn't even cover my wine budget." "Then I suggest you stop drinking," Vance said. He signaled to the driver. "Get your bags out of the jet, Harrison. You aren't riding in the Rolls." "How am I supposed to get to the city?" Harrison screamed as the pilot set his Louis Vuitton bags on the tarmac. "There's an Uber waiting at the gate," Vance said, getting back into the car. "I believe it's an UberX. You should get used to it." The Rolls-Royce pulled away, leaving Harrison Sterling standing alone on the windy tarmac in New Jersey. He pulled out his phone to call his friends, his boys. He called Julian, straight to voicemail. He called Trey, blocked. He called his girlfriend, a model named Celine. She answered. "Celine!" "Thank God," Harrison said. "My dad is being insane. I need you to send a car to Teterboro. And can I stay at your place tonight?" They changed the locks at the penthouse. "Harrison?" Celine's voice was cold. "Don't call me." "What?" "Babe, it's me." "I saw the video, Harrison," she said. "You looked small and weak. And honestly, my agency said, if I'm seen with you, I'll lose the Gucci contract. You're toxic. I made you," Harrison screamed. "I bought you that career. And now you can't even buy a plane ticket," she deadpanned. "Goodbye." The line went dead. Harrison stood there, the wind whipping his hair into his face. He looked at his phone. The Uber driver was texting. "I'm outside. I can't wait long. $4 cancellation fee if you don't show." Harrison Sterling, the heir to an empire, grabbed his heavy bags and started dragging them across the tarmac toward the gate. The wheels on his suitcase squeaked. It was a pathetic, lonely sound. Back in Manhattan, in a corner office overlooking Central Park, Damian Miller signed the final paperwork for the Sterling Plaza transfer. He put the pen down and looked out the window. "All clear?" Seraphiel asked, walking in. She was wearing a stunning red dress. They were going to the opera, a real celebration this time. "All clear," Damian said. "The building is ours. The foundation starts its work next month. We're going to fund aviation scholarships for 1,000 kids." "And Harrison?" she asked. Damian checked his watch. "Currently learning that economy class isn't a seat on a plane. It's a lifestyle." "You think he'll learn?" "I don't care if he learns," Damian said, standing up and taking his wife's hand. "I just care that he never makes anyone feel small again." He kissed her forehead. "Ready to go?" "Ready," Seraphiel smiled. "And Damian?" "Yes? Let's take the subway. The traffic is terrible." Damian laughed. "The subway it is. Best seat in the house." 1 year later. The Sterling Plaza sign was gone. In its place, gleaming in modern silver letters above the Manhattan entrance, was the Miller Institute for Aviation. Inside the lobby, once a cold marble mausoleum to corporate greed and silence, was alive with the sound of teenagers. They were diverse, energetic, and hungry for a future. They were huddled around engine schematics, flight simulators, and scholarship application forms. Damian and Seraphiel stood on the mezzanine, watching them. "Hard to believe this used to be the headquarters of a shipping empire that didn't pay its taxes," Seraphiel said, leaning on the railing. She looked elegant in a cream trench coat, her eyes soft as she watched a young girl receive her pilot's wings pin. "It's better this way," Damian replied, adjusting his scarf. "We turned a monument to ego into a launch pad for dreams. Aero Capital writes off the building as a donation. These kids get a future, and Arthur Sterling gets a tax deduction. Everyone wins." "Except Harrison," Seraphiel noted. Damian didn't smile. Harrison made his own choices. Damian's phone buzzed. He checked the time. "The car is downstairs. Dinner at Le Bernardin, to celebrate the first graduating class." "I'm starving," Seraphiel laughed, taking his arm. They took the elevator down. Outside, the city was bustling with the holiday rush. The air was biting cold, snow flurries dancing in the streetlights. They walked to the curb where the valet stand for the neighboring luxury hotel was located. They weren't driving their own car tonight. They had hired a service, but the driver had pulled into the hotel's valet lane to wait for them. As they waited for their driver to unlock the doors, Damien noticed the valet attendant. The man was huddled in a parka that was slightly too big for him. He was jogging back and forth to the key stand, his breath visible in the freezing air. He looked tired. His face was gaunt, the soft edges of a life of luxury worn away by a year of hard labor. He had a stubble that wasn't a fashion statement. It was just neglect. He was currently handing a ticket to a rude businessman who was yelling about a scratch on his bumper. "It was there when you arrived, sir," the valet said, his voice trembling but polite. "I marked it on the ticket. You can check the timestamp." "Don't give me that! You scratched it!" the businessman yelled, throwing the keys at the valet's chest. "Fetch it! Now! And don't expect a tip, you idiot!" The valet flinched, caught the keys against his chest and bowed his head. "Yes, sir. Right away." Damien froze. He knew that voice. He stepped closer, the street noise fading away. The valet turned, keys in hand, and locked eyes with Damien. It was Harrison Sterling. The silence between them was louder than the New York traffic. Harrison looked different. The swagger was gone. The $5,000 suit was replaced by a cheap polyester uniform with a name tag that just said Harry. He looked at Damien, then at Seraphiel. Shame washed over his face, turning it crimson. He looked like he wanted to crack open the pavement and disappear inside. "Mr. Miller," Harrison whispered. He didn't sneer. He didn't shout. He just sounded broken. Damien looked at the man who had tried to ruin his anniversary. He saw the chapped red hands, the dark circles under his eyes, the total loss of status. Arthur Sterling had held true to his word. Harrison had been cut off completely. Seraphiel stepped forward. She looked at Harrison, then at the rude businessman who was still fuming nearby, checking his watch. "You dropped these," Seraphiel said softly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a pair of leather gloves. Damien's gloves. She handed them to Harrison. "It's freezing out here," she said. Harrison stared at the gloves. His hands were shaking from the cold. He took them slowly, as if they were made of fragile glass. I can't," Harrison stammered. "After what I did to you." "Take them," Damien said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You need them to do your job." "And Harrison?" Harrison looked up, his eyes watery. "The customer isn't always right," Damien said, glancing at the rude businessman who was behaving exactly like Harrison used to. "But the service matters. Keep your head up." Damien opened the car door for Seraphiel. As he was about to get in, he turned back one last time. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a $100 bill, and pressed it into Harrison's hand. "For the hustle," Damien said. "Good luck, Harrison." Harrison put on the gloves. They were warm. He clutched the money. "Thank you," he whispered to the retreating car. "I'm sorry." The black sedan pulled away, merging into the river of taillights. Harrison stood there for a moment, watching them go. Then, the rude businessman whistled at him like a dog. "Hey, buddy, are you parking the car or what?" Harrison took a deep breath. He adjusted the gloves. He didn't snap. He didn't scream. "Do you know who I am?" Because he finally knew exactly who he was. He was just a man trying to make a living. "Coming, sir," Harrison said. He jogged toward the car. Miles away, in a fluorescent-lit break room at the Port Authority bus terminal, Greg Henderson was eating a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. He wore a blue vest that said, "Greyhound Customer Service." "Hey, Greg," his supervisor called out. "We got a situation at Gate 42. Family of 5. Tickets got messed up. They're yelling. They say they're going to sue." Greg wiped his mouth and stood up. A year ago, he would have called security. He would have sneered. He would have looked for a VIP to prioritize to save himself the headache. "I'm on it," Greg said. He walked to gate 42. A stressed father was shouting at the counter agent. The mother was crying, holding a baby. Greg stepped in. Sir, hi, I'm Greg. I know you're frustrated. Let's take a breath. We're going to miss the connection, the father yelled. I know, Greg said calmly. He typed on the terminal. I can't get you on the 5:00 p.m. But I can get you on the 7:00 p.m. And I've got some meal vouchers here for the cafeteria so the kids can eat while you wait. I'll sit here and make sure the seats are assigned personally, so this doesn't happen again. How does that sound? The father deflated. Really? You'd do that? It's my job, Greg smiled. It was a real smile this time. We want to make sure everyone gets treated fairly. As the family walked away, grateful, Greg felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't the rush of power he used to get from bumping passengers. It was something better. It was dignity. Damien and Seraphiel were on a plane again. Not Cloudstream. That airline was gone, liquidated and forgotten. They were flying Air France, headed to Tokyo for a business trip. They walked onto the plane. The flight attendant checked their boarding passes. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Seats 1A and 1B. They settled into the plush leather seats. Damien accepted a glass of champagne. He clinked his glass against Seraphiel's. To Karma, Seraphiel whispered. No, Damien corrected gently, looking at the empty runway ahead of them. To justice. Karma is what happens to you. Justice is what you make happen. He took a sip and looked out the window. The engines roared and the plane lifted off, climbing higher and higher, leaving the turbulence of the past far behind. So what happened in the end? The airline that thought it was too big to fail was dismantled for parts. The manager who followed corrupt orders lost his career, but found his humanity in a humbler place. And Harrison Sterling, the billionaire who thought the world owed him a seat? He's still parking cars in Manhattan, learning the value of hard work, one tip at a time. As for Damien and Seraphiel, they proved that money can buy a first-class ticket, but class itself? That's something you can't buy. You earn it by how you treat people when you think no one is watching. Wow. Talk about a rough landing for Harrison, right? I hope this story reminded you that no matter how much money someone has, respect is the only currency that really matters. We've all met a Harrison Sterling in our lives, someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. But as we saw today, sometimes life has a funny way of balancing the scales. I want to know, what would you have done if you were Damien? Would you have taken the building? Or would you have pressed charges and sent Harrison to prison? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm curious to see who takes the high road. If you enjoyed this story of justice and instant karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. We have a crazy one coming up next week about a landlord who tried to illegally evict a single mum and ended up losing his entire apartment complex. You do not want to miss it. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and remember, be kind or be humble, because karma is always watching. See you in the next one.